If you'd like online business explained to you in a way that you can actually understand, go to latenightim.com/explain. It's completely free, and I made it just for you. Now, how about an episode? Episode 141.
Late Night Internet Marketing.
This week on the Late Night Internet Marketing Podcast, we talk about carrying your own weather and dealing with crazy haters in your day job. All this and more on the Late Night Internet Marketing Podcast.
The Late Night Internet Marketing Podcast.
You've been working for somebody else, but you want a business to run yourself. You want to know how to start and where to begin. Can you get out your comfort zone, my friend? Yes, you can do it right when it's late at night. At the end of the day, your dreams burning inside. So keep it up and you will find that you're building your business one night at a time.
And now, broadcasting late at night from a little studio in the big state of Texas, your host, Mark Mason.
Hey, I hope you are having a fantastic day. This is your host, Mark Mason, coming to you from the little internet marketing radio studio in Dallas. It's been a fantastic week here in Dallas. We've had some beautiful weather. Things are really shaping up before we get into what can be a really hot summer in Texas. And, you know, school is ending. And so we've had a lot of really busy times going to school functions. And I told you guys my daughter was a butterfly, and we have award ceremonies and school picnics and end of baseball season parties and all this kind of stuff. In fact, my little guys are finishing up the season with a tournament starting next weekend. So it looks like, summer is upon us. And one of the really interesting things about summertime for me is that it changes my work schedule. And if you're a side gig, part-time entrepreneur like me, one of the things you come to realize is that your life rolls in seasons. And right now in my life, I'm in a big season where I have some elementary school kids that need some attention and some kids that are going off to college or that are in college that need some attention. That's the big macroscopic season of life that I'm in. And that's going to change. You know, those little kids are going to get older and go on to high school, where in some ways they'll need less day-to-day attention, but in other ways they'll need more attention. And all of that kind of external influence affects my ability or the time that I have available to work on my side gig, given all my other priorities. But I think the important thing to realize is that it's just a season, and we can work through the current season and do the best we can in the current season. And when the season changes, we can change our strategy and do something differently. I saw this many years ago when Pat Flynn had a certain work ethic and a way that he worked. And then when his first child came along, and he talks about this on his podcast, he completely changed things up, changed the way he works, and worked alongside his wife, April, to figure out a schedule that works for him. And now, for those of you that listen to Pat and his podcast, he's in yet another season where he's looking at changing up again. And so, you know, these big seasons, it's okay if you don't have quite the optimum thing, because chances are, whatever your work habits are now, you'll be able to modify them in the future when your circumstances change. And then there are these little seasons too. And I alluded to this earlier. There's this school year season that I'm in, and soon I'm going to be in the summer season. What does that mean for me? Well, that means if I get up early in the summertime, I can get out of the house and go work on my business for maybe even a few hours before my day job starts, because I don't have the burden of needing to get the kids ready for school and all the stuff that's going on. Truth is, my wife does most of the heavy lifting there, but I fix breakfast for the kids every morning. I won't do that in the summer. And so I can leave here at 5:30 in the morning and go work on my business while I enjoy a cup of coffee at Starbucks or whatever. And the point being, you have the opportunity to understand the fact that the things that you do are really seasonal, and you can take advantage of those seasons as your situation changes. And as a part-time entrepreneur, I want to encourage you to always be looking for how you can take advantage of the change of seasons. Now, talking about a change of seasons, changes of seasons bring weather. And I wanted to tell you guys the story that made me very happy about my friend Brady, who I've talked about many times on the show, who started a blog about the thing that he knows best, pharmacy. And what he noticed in the marketplace was there are a lot of pharmacy blogs that talk about pharmacy to other pharmacists, but there weren't many blogs where pharmacists were talking to people. And so Brady started this blog called Helpful Pharmacists. And as he works through his seasons over at helpfulpharmacist.com, he's able to write articles that are in general helpful to people who are the users of pharmacy. And it turns out that pharmacists are actually very, very interested in reading that kind of content too. And so Brady's had some success there over at helpfulpharmacist.com. Well, he's had so much success that actually a big publication, Pharmacy Times, asked him to write for their big media blog over at pharmacytimes.com. And that's been very exciting because Brady was able to negotiate a backlink, which you can see if you go to the show notes. I'll have a link over to Brady's latest article on pharmacytimes.com. And in that article, he talks about carrying your own weather. Now, this is very exciting for me because that's something that I've been talking about for years. And quite frankly, I think I got that idea from Zig Ziglar maybe 30 years ago. But it's this idea that instead of letting yourself be influenced by the weather around you, if it's a gloomy day, you feel gloomy, or if your circumstances are gloomy, if things around you or people around you are bringing you down, why let yourself be affected by that? Why not just go ahead and bring your own weather, bring your own sunshine? Because we all know we feel better on a sunny day. And that's how I try to roll. In everything that I do, I'm going to enjoy it or I'm simply not going to do it. I just choose to make everything as happy as I possibly can. And that's served me well over the last 30 years. And I think that that's an important idea for you and your internet business. And so I encourage you to go over to this article on Pharmacy Times. Again, there's a link in the show notes at latenightim.com/141. And first, take note of the fact that there's a backlink to Brady's Helpful Pharmacist blog in the article. Here's a couple of points here from this. One is the weather thing. I think attitude can make or break your internet business. And I think you really need to think about what your attitude is and how you're rolling on a day-to-day basis, because integrated over time, that can really make the difference in whether or not you succeed or fail in whatever you're doing in life. And I want to really encourage you to read that article and take those ideas to heart and apply them to your business. But the second thing is, notice that Brady, in negotiating this article with Pharmacy Times, was able to negotiate for a backlink not only to his blog, which sends link juice to his blog, but to his social media profile, which brings him followers. That was huge because he did not get that automatically when they asked him to write for him. They originally published one of his articles with no hot links. They referenced his blog, but the links weren't hot. And knowing about SEO, Brady contacted them and said, hey, would you guys mind actually making that link live? And they had no issue with that at all. And in fact, Brady's brought them a lot of traffic. They're thrilled, and you would do well to follow Brady's example. Are you blogging in a space where there are mega blogs that you can write for and contribute your content so that you can get exposure? This kind of guest posting, whether it's on a big professional blog like what Brady's done or on some even medium-sized blog, is a well-known, time-honored way to improve your SEO. So we applaud Brady both on the concept of bringing your own weather and getting that message out there to the pharmacy community and now to the late night internet marketing community, but also on having the SEO savvy to go ahead and ask for the backlink. Sometimes all it takes is just a nice request to say, hey guys, I'd really appreciate a live backlink in this article. Thank you very much. And you might be surprised at the response.
And now, it's time to hear what listeners just like you are thinking. Late night listener feedback.
Okay, so I wanted to handle a little listener feedback. You know, that's one of my very favorite things. I promise you, if you go over to latenightim.com/iTunes, that you can click through there and get to iTunes on your computer and leave me a review. And if you do that, I will happily give you a shout out on the show notes. And this time it's a shout out to Ross from paidinsights.com, who leaves a 5-star review saying that he's been listening for 6 months. It's relevant and up-to-date info for him, and he likes the transparency. And I appreciate that. You know, I get that comment a lot, Ross, and I really appreciate the shout out there with regard to transparency, because not only is that just the way I normally am, but I think there's a lot of not so transparent people online, especially with regard to internet marketing. So I appreciate that. So thank you so much for the shout out. Those ratings and reviews make a huge difference to me. But here's something interesting. So I checked out what Ross has got going on over at paidinsights.com. There are some pretty interesting shows over there. He's got a new podcast over there, and a couple of the shows are about breaking down other people's keyword strategy, particularly for paid search. And so that looked really interesting to me. It looks like there's some great content over there. And so I want to encourage you guys to do two things. One is head over to paidinsights.com and tell Ross hello. And then the other thing is to leave me a review, latenightim.com/iTunes. It's so much appreciated, and it helps people like Ross find the show. I think I told you guys this funny story where one time my HR manager called me into her office. We were talking, and she said, "I know a secret about you." And I said, well, what? What is it? And she said, "You have a podcast." And I said, "I do have a podcast. How did you know that?" And she said, "Well, I was on iTunes, and it said people who listen to the shows that I listen to also listen to the Late Night Internet Marketing Podcast." So that's the value that these things bring. First of all, it outs me. It gets me out of the closet. But second of all, it helps people discover the podcast. And the more people that listen, the more people I can help. So thanks again, Ross. Really appreciate the view, and great work over at paidinsights.com.
This week, in the world of internet marketing news. So a little bit of internet marketing news for you. You know, the sister publication to Search Engine Land, which I read all the time, as we've mentioned many times on the show, is Marketing Land. Marketing Land has an interesting article, 12 Email Marketing Fundamentals to Master. And again, if you look at that blog titles, you talk a little bit about copywriting here. It's got a number in it. We know that stops people's eyes. It's got email marketing. It's got good SEO, right? Because people are searching for email marketing. Fundamentals to master implies a benefit that by learning these simple basics, I can become a master of email marketing. So pretty good title there. Doesn't evoke a lot of curiosity, although it does leave the open loop of, I wonder what those 12 things are. And that's generally the magic of these list posts, is the open loop that they leave. So as usual on these high-end publications that you see in Marketing Land and Search Engine Land, there are a couple of things in this article that I thought were really interesting I wanted to bring to your attention. One thing that is recommended by this article that I've never actually thought before is that this Goldilocks idea of a subject line that's just right in terms of length is not really true. That actually, if you've got the average length subject line, not too long and not too short, that's probably the wrong answer. Research suggests that a key driver of email open rates is the length of the subject line. And if it's really short or maybe longer than average, that can be a lot better than the medium average line. And I would suppose
that part of that is because this makes it stick out in the list when it's on your screen. A short subject line looks weird compared to all the average length ones, probably the same for a long one. Although in certain email clients, you're going to get the dots of ellipses, so I'm not sure how effective that would be. That's something you would want to split test, but it's something I've never really tested, and I thought it was a really interesting thing. Usually I'm very worried about what the words are, but not how long the subject line is. So that seems like a really interesting thing to test. And if you've got a tool like ConvertKit at latenightim.com/ConvertKit, then it's easy to test subject lines. That's built into ConvertKit, and you can split those very easy. And if you're not familiar with this idea of split testing, you can send the same email to two different groups in your list with two different subject lines, and you can compare the open rates. And if you do that over and over and over again, you can learn how your audience best responds to subject lines, and you can get better and better at your subject lines and get higher and higher open rates. And so that's why you'd want to do that. So that was a really interesting point. Another interesting point is this idea that you should front load a link. Now, this is something that I do, but not in the way that's described in this article. They suggest that the first few words of the first sentence of the first paragraph should be hot linked to your call to action. That's where the eye stops if that's linked. And a lot of times you'll get that click just because it's linked up front. And so I thought that was very interesting. That's definitely something that I am going to test. And here's something that I've felt for a long time, but I wasn't sure about. And that is that in email, accuracy trumps personalization. Now, this idea, hey, Joe, this programmable thing where you pull the name out. Their point is, if your list is not 100% accurate with regard to names, in other words, if you suspect maybe people are putting in fake names, or you have some opt-ins that come in without any name at all, or you know that the name is bogus or wrong, having that personalization there, or missing, that would be another option. Having that personalization there can actually hurt you when it's inaccurate. And so they recommend, instead of using personalization, use something more generic like hey or hi or hello. And that's a lot of times I do that because I am sensitive to that. And I have looked at my email list, and you can scan through it and find lots of places where people have put in bogus names because they're trying to protect their privacy, or they're trying to be funny or whatever. Or in some cases, the names are missing, particularly opt-ins that come in from text message. The names are generally not there. And so that can be an important thing. Also something to test over time to see how that works. So I will leave a link to this article on Marketing Land in the show notes. Again, it's 12 email marketing fundamentals for you to master.
It's time to get to work building your internet business. One night at a time.
One night at a time.
So on to the main segment. We've been talking a lot about this late night internet marketing Facebook group. It's really cool. And last week I talked to you about Phil. He's tearing it up in there, making all kinds of progress and inspiring everyone in the group. It's a small group, and you can get there over at latenightim.com/FB group. That's FB group for Facebook group. And you can join us and hang out. It's a cool place. And if you're not cool, you get kicked out. So we roll like that. It's happy. And I bring my own weather to the Facebook group as well. And so you can see that in there. And so we've been hanging out in there, and Phil is in the middle of working on building a project that is related in some way to his day job. He's an expert in a particular area of engineering, and he's teaching this engineering online. It's not a conflict of interest with his day job, but it's just taking the knowledge that he's an expert in that he applies to his day job and packaging that and making it available to more people. And so that's really cool. And that's something that I know a lot of us have done or are in the process of doing. We're expert in an area where we're making a living, and we're also trying to bring that presence online. The Phil situation is that his boss knows that he's doing it and the company's cool with it, but one of his coworkers is a total hater, and his complaining to Phil's management about the fact that Phil is doing this stuff on the side, and if Phil's got a business outside of his day job business, is that fair, and how can he be serious about his day job? And basically it just sounds like bitter jealousy to me. This guy's just a troll hater who doesn't want to see anyone else succeed. Now, a lot of these things, if you break them down, these kind of people, this kind of attitude comes from a scarcity mentality or a jealousy mentality where, why poor me? Why don't I get to do that because Phil is having some success? Why don't I? How can that be fair? How's it fair for Phil to do something that I'm not doing? And when really the answer is Phil's busting his butt. I'm going to tell you that right now because we're seeing it in the Facebook fan group. He's earning that progress that he's making in his side business. And so this raises a lot of questions, and we've covered some of this before in the show, but I wanted to get to this issue particularly because it's the cross of two things that we've talked about before. One is this sort of troll mentality, and the second thing is how you handle your day job, conflicts with your day job. And this is the overlap of those two, which I think makes it particularly interesting. Now, in this particular case, and I think this is always what I've recommended, and I'll reiterate this. When you're working on something on your side business that is related in any way to what you're doing in your day job, I think it is a smart move to talk to people that you trust at your company and let them know what you're doing and make sure they're okay with it. And I know for a fact, in Phil's case, he had done this. He'd talked to his boss, and they know what he's doing, and they're cool with it. And in fact, enlightened employers will love the fact that a luminary in the industry or someone who's establishing industry-wide credibility is working for them, because there's lots of benefits for this. One, it makes Phil better at his job because he's constantly researching to bring the best stuff to his online customers. He's bringing that same information to his job every day. So Phil is a better employee, but it also eventually can be a benefit from people who want to work with Phil's company, because as Phil gets more and more famous, they may win business based on the fact that Phil knows what's going on, and that may actually lead to real sales for that company. So there's lots of reasons for an employer to be okay with a side gig. For that matter, I think, if you abstract it, if Phil had a lemonade stand, they shouldn't care. So why should they care if he happens to be working on something that's adjacent to what he works on at work? So kudos to Phil for making sure that his employer was cool with it, and I recommend that for you too. And also, I think it's really important, and I've said this many times, that you never, ever, ever work on your business while you're at your day job. Just don't cross the beams. That's a Ghostbusters reference for you young listeners in the audience. You don't want to even leave the impression with somebody that you are using your company's resources or time in order to advance the state of your business. And so I think that's really important. And that's one of the reasons that this brand is Late Night Internet Marketing, because every time I get a chance, I'm trying to draw the line to say, hey, look, this business is something that I'm doing at night on my own time when I'm not being paid by my daytime employer. So that's one axis. The other axis is this whole thing about the troll. And I tell you what, there are people that you are going to encounter, whether you're blogging and there are people in the comments, whether you're a podcaster and there are people listening to your voice that are going to take issue with what you have to say or how you said it, or just the fact that you're speaking at all, or the tone of your voice, or the way your voice sounds, or the color of your hair, and they are going to tell you about it. And they are going to absolutely try and bring you down to their level. And in my experience, most of these people have some fundamental issue going on where they have a scarcity mentality, or they're jaded for some kind of reason. And usually, especially in a case like Phil's, you'll see this because rather than coming to you personally, these people feel like they need to either come at you publicly, or in this case, they need to come at you by talking to your boss at work, which is just a totally ridiculous kind of thing to go do and completely inappropriate. And so what is the proper procedure? Well, when we talked about this in the Facebook fan group, what we suggested in this particular case for Phil, rule number one is don't feed the troll. And I mean, I think the most you can ever do with a troll kind of guy is to say, hey, thanks for your input. I really appreciate it. I'll consider what you said. Thank you very much. Really appreciate the feedback. And usually when I get this negative feedback from people of whatever flavor, the attitude that I will take, again, because I'm carrying my own weather and I'm not letting this troll affect me, is, okay, treat the guy with respect, whether he deserves it or not, and then analyze what was said to see if there's any truth in it, even a little bit, something that I can learn, some value that I can get out of it, take the tone out of it, take the attitude out of it, and look at the data. Is there any data in the information from the troll that's helpful? And then set the whole thing aside. Take that tiny little nugget of information and set the rest of it aside and just put it behind me. So that's one thing. Don't feed the troll. The second thing that we talked about is, okay, so what are the real implications of this? And the real world implication of this troll is that he could be creating difficulties for Phil's boss. And even though that's not Phil's fault or Phil's problem, something that Phil is doing, which is running an online business, could be indirectly causing some trouble for Phil's boss. And maybe this, evil troll guy is talking to Phil's boss, but maybe he's also talking to HR and to Phil's boss's boss. Who knows what he's doing? It depends on how trollish and wacky he is. So one good thing to do would be, I think, is to consider, if you trust this boss, is to check in with him and say, hey, boss, I know this is going on. We had talked about this before. You said you were okay with it. I'm really sorry if this is causing you any trouble, but obviously, as you know very well, this doesn't have anything to do with work. Is there something that you want me to do about this situation or whatever? And just air it out with your boss so that you guys stay on the same page. I think even though Phil knows he's in the right, and even though he's not doing anything that is technically an issue with his employer, if it's inconveniencing his employer in some way because of this troll, it's probably worth checking in. And so that was my advice to Phil. And it's my advice to you too, is that if you get in these situations, just bring some transparency and say, hey, this is what I'm doing. I love my work so much that I'm taking it online because I'm passionate about it. Thank you for supporting that. Hey, I know there's this issue. What can we do to work through that and solve that together? Now, I think when you do that, always you have to be prepared for the possible outcome that your boss is going to say, as a matter of fact, this is bugging me and you need to make a choice and you need to either shut this down or do it more quietly or, go find another job. And I would say a couple of things. One is if that's what's coming, much better to know that up front where you have some time to prepare and you can agree on a timeline for exiting than to have that slammed on you one afternoon when maybe business turns down a little bit and you're the first guy they lay off and it's because of your online business and you didn't even see it coming. So I think transparency is good. And that's always what I advocate in these sorts of situations, especially when you're working for someone that you trust. If you're not working for someone that you trust, you probably need to go find a new job anyway. And if you're working with someone who's not okay with your business, you probably need to go find a new job anyway. So they're probably, if they're asking you to leave in this situation, they're probably just pushing you in the direction that you need to go anyway. So I hope that's helpful to you. I'd love to hear your stories about your conflicts with your day job. If you're doing stuff part-time, if you've got overlap or maybe you don't have overlap, but they just don't like the fact that you've got a side job because they expect you to be thinking about them 24 hours a day. I'd really appreciate that. In my particular case, something funny happened to me just this week. One of my colleagues, actually at the next level, a manager at the next level in my company, called me out of the blue on the phone and said, hey, I'm trying to write a job posting for an online publication, where we post for jobs. And I'm trying to write the headline. And I know that you know a lot about writing copy. Would you help me write this headline? And I was like, sure, I'll be happy to do that. And so we talked for a little bit, and his comments were like, yeah, and I hear you talking about this on your podcast. I'm like, oh, great. My management's listening to my podcast. So that's very interesting. But obviously, at least for the moment, those guys are cool with that. And always reminds me of Scott Adams, the cartoonist that wrote Dilbert. He worked for AT&T. He took a lot of his examples of bad or goofy workplace behavior from AT&T. He made fun of things that happened at AT&T and other technology companies, like the technology company that I work for. And he would publish those in a cartoon strip. And they kept him on for a very, very long time. But eventually his business got so big that it was much bigger than his day job. But they worked with him all through that time. And I hope your employer's like Scott Adams' employer. And I hope eventually your side gig gets so huge that you just don't have time for your day job anymore. All right, well, that wraps things up for this week. I hope you have an absolutely fantastic week. And I want you to do what Brady, the helpful pharmacist, tells you to do this week. Listen to your pharmacist. Take your own weather with you. Bring your good attitude with you. Make that a conscious decision. Zig Ziglar talks about getting up in the morning and deciding in the morning when your feet hit the ground that it's a great day and it's your big opportunity to make something out of it every day. And just decide that. You don't need anyone's permission to have a great day. You can decide to have a great day all by yourself. But if you do need someone's permission, I give you permission to have a great day for the rest of the day today and all day tomorrow and every day after that. Go get them. We'll talk to you soon.
You can do it right when it's late at night.
You've been listening to the Late Night Internet Marketing Podcast.
Be sure to visit latenightpodcast.com today to leave feedback for Mark. Download special bonus content, access the show notes, and more. See you there.
Until then, go and make some great progress on your internet business. One night at a time.
One night at a time.
Hey, that was super fun, running crazy late this week. I've been working so hard on 100K Factory. My store is past the $100 a week metric most weeks, and we're headed north. And so I'm really, next stop, $100 a day is what I'd really like to get to, making good progress, learning a lot about Facebook ads. And now I'm going to start taking some of the stuff that I've learned about Facebook ads, and I am going to build a Facebook ad funnel where I'm going to create a killer piece of pillar content on search engine optimization. I am going to have a content upgrade in that post, which is going to require an opt-in, which is going to be an SEO list of tips list, a downloadable PDF, a checklist for publishing posts. And then that's going to put people into an email sequence. And that email sequence is going to sell a $97 SEO course that I'm working on. And all of that engine is going to be driven by Facebook ads. So that's what I'm working towards. I'll be talking about that. Super crazy busy. Everything takes longer than it should. And I got to go now, but I hope you guys have an absolutely fantastic week. How cool would it be if I could spend $100 on Facebook ads to sell a $100 course and end up with a boatload of opt-ins in the process? Or better yet, what if I can spend $50 to sell a $100 course and end up with a truckload of opt-ins? That's a lead generation machine, and that's what we're going to be building live and in full Technicolor in the weeks to come this summer. Take care.
Late night internet marketing.
Hey, it's Mark again. I wanted to tell you one more time about this absolutely free resource that I have for helping people who are trying to get the big picture for internet marketing actually get started and understand what all their choices are. If that's not you, there's no more content. You can skip to the end. But if you're someone who came to this podcast because you're searching for how to get started online and you just can't cut through all the noise, I get it. That was me in 2007 when I was trying to get started. There were so many people throwing offers at me that I really couldn't even understand what all the different business models were. I couldn't understand how money moved around on the internet. And I couldn't really get a grip on what direction I wanted to go in so I could figure out how to move forward. I've created a free video resource for you just for that purpose at latenightim.com/explain. In several short videos, I just explained to you what internet marketing is all about and what online business is all about and the different options that you have for starting an online business. There's nothing to buy there. You just sign up for access and you get the videos just like that. So if that's interesting to you, or if you know someone who's in a same situation, send them that link, latenightim.com/explain. And let me know what you think. I'd love to hear what people are thinking that are in the exact same position that I was in more than a decade ago in 2007. In some ways, it seems like yesterday. And in some ways, it seems like an entire lifetime ago. Again, that's latenightim.com/explain.
Late night internet marketing.